My castaway this week is someone you should be familiar with. He's our headmaster, Mr. Kennedy. He was educated at Fettes College, Edinburgh, famous as the inspiration for Hogwarts, the school James Bond attended, and, as all you Marvel fans will know, where Captain Britain, incidentally a talented physicist, studied. Mr. Kennedy graduated in 1996 with honours in engineering and a PGC from St John's College, Cambridge. He brings with him a wealth of experience, having enjoyed a 19-year career at rugby school, Sevenoaks School, and Dulwich College. He also has a keen interest in both music, playing 3 instruments, and sport, being a Cambridge Rugby Blue. So, as a 20-year-old, he played rugby in front of 66,000 people at Twickenham in the varsity match between Cambridge and Oxford. What was that experience like?
Well, it's an experience I'm really grateful for. All my life I wanted to play sport at some kind of high level. I love playing sport. I love watching sport. So even though I'm Scottish, the chance to run at Twickenham in front of lots of people was fantastic. And actually really nerve-wracking. I remember being so nervous actually running onto the pitch that there used to be 2 or 3 little steps up to the pitch, and most players would just sprint out. But I really had to slow down and go up really carefully up the steps because I was really nervous going out. We ended up losing the game in the end, but it is a memory that will stay with me for a long time, especially the first 5-10 minutes, because the crowd is so loud that literally you're shouting something to the person next to you, they can't hear you at all. And then by the end, of course, the crowd is much quieter as the game kind of comes to a close. But it was an amazing experience, and actually I'm in real admiration for professional sportsmen who go out and do that week in, week out. And even though I just had one tiny glimpse of it, you feel under so much pressure. I was waking up, a month or 2 before every day, just thinking straight away about this game and this moment. So you got a glimpse of kind of the pressure to kind of perform well that professional sports people have all the time.
Well, you clearly excel in a number of areas. So I suppose an obvious question is, you always wanted to be a teacher?
Both my parents are teachers. I grew up in a boarding school in Edinburgh, and I think I knew I loved living in a school community because working with young people is such a positive, energetic thing, and especially in schools where you have a chance to do so many different kinds of activities. So I really enjoyed the kind of academic work that I did, but I love the sport and the music and the being part of a community that live together and do all these things together. So I think I knew I wanted to work in that kind of place with people who were doing those things. But it wasn't really until, I suppose, my 2nd or 3rd year at university that I had to really think, well, what is it I want to do? And I often think, is there another job I could have done or should have done? Perhaps from the point of view of broadening my experience and coming into teaching later, it would have been good to do something else. But actually, I think I would have just been holding back the inevitable, which was, I really wanted to be a teacher, and I've loved it. So I have no regrets in that sense.
So finally, what would your advice be to someone being the majority of us, who don't always succeed?
I think most people don't always succeed all the time, and I think one of the most important things to say to young people is that when they compare themselves to people they see as really successful, even around them at school, let alone outside of school, it's really easy to think that people are just talented and it just happens for them. But my experience is that you don't really get good at something, and if you talk to people who really excel in the world, they don't get good at things except by a lot of really hard work and a really hard practice. And therefore, being passionate about what you do, spending those hundreds or thousands of hours doing things and practicing them, is what you have to do. So everybody can do that, everybody can commit, and effort makes a huge difference. So I think in terms of being the best that you can be, the thing you can believe most is that working hard at things does really make a difference.
Well, I hope you succeeded in pinning down 5 choices of song, because it's time to turn now to your first one. So tell me about it.
So my parents love music. They both play lots of music. They both sing. They still sing in choirs now, even though they're retired. And they took a great deal of time to pass on to me and my brothers, and to share with other people a love for music. My dad used to supervise our practices, and we'd always try and get out of them. We'd always try and hide the music so we couldn't practice, but he'd always manage to find it. So making us practice was a really important part of what they did. And they always said to us, one day you'll really thank me for this. And we definitely didn't at the time. But I now find myself with 3 boys myself, telling them the same, that they're practicing their instruments, and actually one day they'll really thank me for it. And the music especially that I remember from my parents, although there was music of all kinds, was that they had, had their record collection of largely music from the 60s, all kind of music from the 60s. And my mum brought back from London once when she had a trip down there 2 big Beatles albums, a red album and a blue album, 62 to 66, 67 to 70. And that was the first music I really learned to play on the guitar, on the piano. And I had got such a lot of joy out of listening to those records. I loved the melodies, the chord sequences. I loved working them out by myself. And then working out also the harmonies that John Lennon and Paul McCartney would sing. If you watch them singing live now in YouTube clips, just the way they managed those kind of harmonies together was fantastic. And when I had the house to myself, there was nothing I liked better than to put on kind of Beatles records at a really high volume. And as with all 60s music, they just express something so optimistic and so joyful, and it's really hard not to sort of join in with that when you listen to Beatles music. So the example I've chosen, I could have chosen many I suppose, is a song called Ticket to Ride.
So today, how and when do you like to listen to music?
So I have a 15-20 minute or so car journey to school. Normally I'll listen to radio in some form on the way in. But I love having music around me. So in my office, whenever I get the chance, especially when I'm working after school, no one else is around, that's when I'll usually listen to music. And then at home, we'll have music on a lot. In fact, all around the house, we've got different ways of kind of playing it. And it's something that our family have really enjoyed doing now together.
So if we walk down the corridor and we hear faint sound of Beatles, we know where that's coming from. So you talked about your parents passing on their love of music to you. So do you think in an age where music's increasingly becoming a private thing, we're losing something?
That's a really good question. One of the things I've loved about coming to Trinity is that I think there are lots of families still interested in music and playing music. And in fact, we have a music department who encourage everyone to sing and be part of a choir. And those experiences were very important for me. And I'm so glad in a sense that there are pupils here who are getting a chance to do that. They might have known it before, they may not have, and maybe the first time they play music or sing in a choir. So in that sense, I think we can still encourage it. And in an interesting way, I think whilst the musical experience is changing, actually so much more music now is accessible for young people, and actually in a way people are listening to music all the time. I mean, they might be locking themselves away with headphones on a bus or a train or while they're walking, so something is lost, but at the same time there's a lot of music being listened to and a lot more music being produced, and in a sense music it's much more democratic. Lots of people now can produce recorded music, which wasn't the case 30-40 years ago. So as always in progress, some things are gained, some things are lost.
So on to your next choice, tell me about it.
Well, I'm Scottish. I don't sound it most of the time. I sound quite English. But actually, my parents are both Glaswegian. They moved to Edinburgh when they first got married. So I grew up in Edinburgh. And I love the Proclaimers music because there's something deeply kind of Scottish that it captures. It's very raw, I think. It's quite unsophisticated often, but they've got amazing energy and amazing humour. And I think it captures something of the dignity, the passion, the faith even of Scottish working men in the ordinary things in their lives. My father's father, my grandfather, he worked in a factory all his life, and my dad used to remind us that when his father, my grandfather, and his sister were growing up, they only had one pair of shoes in the family, and they had to go to school on alternate days because you had to have shoes to go to school, and they couldn't afford to have 2 pairs of shoes. And so therefore, like many parents of people of my parents' generation, they were the first to go to university from very working class families, kind of after the war. So there I was, kind of finding myself in this sort of quite well-to-do Edinburgh boarding school, and yet only 2 generations ago it was a very different experience. And so the Proclaimers music captures something of that sort of very ordinary working class life around Edinburgh. And they were from Leith, which was the docks area in Edinburgh, which is changing now, but was for a long time where obviously all the shipyards, lots of the trade industries were based. And so that's what they represent. And the other thing I love about the Proclaimers is that this song that I've chosen has become the anthem of the Scottish Rugby Union. And it's been some hard years. There's been some hard years for Scottish rugby. But this is a great tune they play whenever kind of Scotland score, and there's definitely more chance of that nowadays than there was before. And particularly this Saturday, most years Scotland goes to Twickenham without too much chance, but I'm really hoping this time we've got a little bit more of a chance than we've had before. I've seen the Proclaimers live twice, and I loved it because all that energy, all that passion, all that wit kind of comes through in their music. So that's why I've chosen 500 miles.
So, sitting here today, we're about 500 miles from Edinburgh, perhaps not precise enough for an engineer. Do you feel like you're 500 miles from home?
Yes, I think sometimes sometimes I definitely feel the distance. We go up to Scotland as many times as we can, obviously, to see family, and I love going up there. My parents now live in Fife. We love being on the beach there. We love playing golf there, spending time as a family. So I get up every so often. But actually, no, I think home is very much in London now, and we're really happy with that. We enjoy it. I'm married to an English wife, so obviously we've got to compromise a little bit there.
So your next song is very different in style, but it explores some of these similar themes, so tell me more.
So I've chosen a song from Les Miserables. I've always loved musicals. Again, this is a big part of my growing up. We used to always watch them as a family, especially around Christmas time. And then I remember when I was about 8 or 9, the school where my parents taught, before I was there, they put on a production of Jesus Christ Superstar. And I remember just being transfixed by the whole experience, especially the music. And from then on, just really loved musicals. And I played in a band for a production of Joseph. My family now love watching musicals, whether it's a Jungle Book or on one holiday we watched West Side Story about 5 or 6 times over, and my boys just loved the kind of music as well as the kind of movement and dance that has, as well as the story. So musicals have always been really important, and I think Les Mis is a fantastic musical. It's quite unusual, I think. I think the musical genre quality is more akin to classical music sometimes than the sort of musical type songs. So this song particularly, it portrays, I think, the strength, the depth, or the importance of the relationship between a father figure and a son figure, and that's the theme that's really important to me. Obviously, as one of 3 sons, and also a father of 3 sons, and also the sense in which this is sung as a prayer, a kind of meditation, a kind of a song to God, asking Him to answer sort of His deepest cry. So that's why I love this song.
So on to your next song.
So the song I've chosen next is an aria from Handel's Messiah. I'm amazed at the way that the singing experiences I had at school have really stayed with me. So I sung in a couple of different choirs when I was at school, but it's the things you sing like Mozart's Requiem or the Chichester Psalms, or Fauré's Requiem, which really stay with you. And in fact, there's a Trinity alumni staff student choir performance of Fauré's Requiem, so I'm really looking forward to singing that later this month, because I haven't sung it since school. But it's really striking how powerful those memories are, and how much that music stays with you, and how much I enjoy listening to that music. And it's quite hard to sort of narrow down which piece of music you've sung to choose for this programme, but I've chosen I Know That My Redeemer Liveth from Handel's Messiah. I think the Messiah is an extraordinary piece of writing, a really genuinely divinely inspired piece of writing, which I think just brings alive all the kind of scriptural passages that are presented through that work.
So obviously the song's religious in nature, so how important is religion in your life?
Yeah, it's very important to me, and I suppose as you look through all these songs, there's an element of faith in them, particularly in Bring Him Home, in that song, and also in the last song by U2, which I'm going to say more about in a moment. So faith is really important. It's really important to me. I know to my wife and to my family. We're very sort of involved in a church up in Peckham that we've been in for the last sort of 13, 14 years. And I think ever since I was young, I think I knew that actually faith was probably a very central thing in my life, and wanted to really invest in it. So that's what I've really sought to do. And for me, there's a very powerful connection between music and being able to express kind of worship in a way sometimes that words can't. And so in a number of these songs, that's one of the things I've loved about them, is that they are songs with which you can reflect truths that are sometimes quite difficult to express just in words, but the music captures them.
So as well as your faith, another important area of your life is your education and occupation in physics and engineering. Do you view these as separate aspects of your life?
No, I don't. And of course, I think in a number of people's eyes, they sort of have to be kind of separate things, but I don't think so at all. I've loved looking at the world in different ways, and I think one of the things to realise about science or about religion is that there are different ways of looking at the world, and actually I think there can be complementary ways of looking at the world. So I hold them in very complementary terms, and a number of people would disagree with that, but equally there are a number of really fascinating eminent scientists who hold a deeply held religious conviction. That's certainly been true over the last 200 or 300 years. It's true now of scientists now. Equally, there'll be scientists who don't hold that. So I don't see one as having to be to the exclusion of the other. They are different ways of looking at the world, and I think people need to decide on what for them represents the way the world is. And for me, a Christian perspective and a scientific perspective are complementary ways of doing that.
Now, moving on to your final song, tell me about it.
So when I was probably in the most formative stage musically, it was in my teenage years. One of the biggest bands in the world were U2, and I loved their music. And I could have, I suppose, chosen lots of bands from around that time, but I chose this song because I happened to see U2 at Wembley a few years ago, and they performed this song. And Bono's a pretty divisive figure. I think he's done some amazing things. But in terms of being a performer and in terms of presenting something more than just the music at that concert, he did that incredibly well. And I remember him singing this song. He was kneeling down at the front of the stage and almost sort of being in an act of worship himself. And I think that's a great example of what I talked about before, of how music can capture something more important, and how he'd chosen that medium to share that with the thousands of people who'd seen it. Of course, the other thing is that, like many bands, U2 produce some fantastic live stadium music. And this is a lesser known song probably compared to many, but I think it's one that was made or was written and to be performed in a big stadium environment, and it's an experience I won't forget.
Well, thank you, Stevie, for a very good, thought-provoking selection. However, I fear you will soon have used your engineering skills to construct a raft, so you won't have much of a chance to listen to them. Unfortunately, I also fear that a raft will only take the weight of you and one disc exactly, so you'll have to wave goodbye to 4 of them. In that case, which one would you choose?
Well, there's only one piece of music there that's really stood the test of time, and that would be the piece from Handel's Messiah. But I think in terms of a choice I'd really like to take with me that would really motivate and be inspiring on a raft, I'd take the Proclaimers.
And finally, as is customary, you're allowed the complete works of Shakespeare and the Bible and one luxury item. So what would you take?
I think I would want to be able to play music myself, so I think I'd want a piano with me.
Good choice.